So the power of text has to do with authority and what is considered an authoritative text on these issues. And so this would be things like medicine, religion, law, that established a hierarchy of difference. And what is a hierarchy of difference? It's a system of classification of people predicated on socially constructed idea of superior and inferior identities. So this is like the early writings on race and how white people were quote unquote superior and all other races were not. And then this is that stuff like there's 5 breeds of men that we read in the book. And what establishes these hierarchy difference? Yeah, like systems of classification like science, even though it's actually not science, it's kind of like pseudoscientific. It's like their social beliefs construed as science. But yeah, hierarchy is a difference, right? And for every sort of category, there's like every socially constructed category, so race, class, sex, gender, there would be a historically privileged position, and then there'd be a historically sort of oppressed position, historically, right? So like if you take a like race, historically privileged position is white, historically oppressed is non-white, right? Male, female, right? Historically privileged has been male, historically oppressed has been female, right? And that really gets at that hierarchy of difference, right? That there's for each category, there's quote unquote superior identity and inferior identity. And so it's good that we're working on unpacking this today. The power of text authorized versions that construct, maintain, and legitimize system of inequality and domination by preferred versions of history. Yes, there's that notion that history is written by the winners, but even things like again like science, law. Who writes the law, right? Right, and think about all the unjust laws that we had because of racism in our society, or sexism, right? Women weren't even allowed to vote, right? Until the 1900s, right? And yeah, where you were allowed to live, who was allowed to vote, right? And then, yeah, how this connects to history, right? What stories get told about our history, right? We have this idea of the history of America, but there was 2 million Native Americans here, right? Before, there's this notion of Christopher Columbus arriving and this sort of dominant hegemonic story of American empire, right? And who is not included in that story, right? And who gets to tell that story? And that leads us to this idea of silenced histories, the hidden or absent accounts of history that are suppressed or omitted. So yeah, definitely like the genocide of Native peoples, the story of Japanese interned in internment camps in the U.S. Right? The American government put Japanese people in concentration camps, right? And yeah, how does that story, get omitted or not become mainstream history, right? Like so. It's looking it up and telling those stories. Yeah, so what history has been overlooked, right? What history has been omitted, right? The first poem that we looked at in Engagement 1, American Poetry, is a really good example of like kind of coming back to silent histories and trying to dig them up and share them and tell people, oh yeah, remember Emmett Till, right? Remember Joe Hill, right? And his struggle for an 8-hour workday, right? Remember Nina Simone and James Baldwin, right? It's important for us to dig this up and to know our histories and to ask ourselves, what history's been overlooked? What do people not want us to know, right? About history and about the past.